Sup YouTube, I'm 8064, celebrating my 570 subs special! Today I'm here with a video you guys wanted for quite a while, and finally I'm here to deliver, as today I will be going through every single possible location you can explore within Miitopia and rank them all from the absolute worst to the absolute best. I'm sorry. The worlds of Miitopia. I'll be ranking the worlds based off of how memorable they are, how enjoyable they are to go through, the music, and how good are their plot parts, if there are any. So be sure to hit like and subscribe, as well as share this video channel and my Instagram to those you love. And with that being said, let's go! I've complained about this world like literally a video ago. And honestly, the way I described Powder Peaks in that video pretty much sums up why it's my least favorite world. Just take a listen. Traveler's Hub is a town of a world that consists of 3 separate worlds. I mean, come on, if the worlds are this tiny, why tease us all the way back in Greenhorn about Powdered Peaks, the smallest world in the game? It is tiny, and by that logic, what is even the point of Nimbus being the foundation ground of the skyscraper, which is its own world, alongside other world, which I really don't count as its own world. And I just want to see more from these 3 worlds individually, rather than one package being wrapped around by Traveler's Hub. Although this could have been done to save space, and that is pretty fair. But at that point, why even make these 3 worlds? Regardless, let's move on. That really does explain it, doesn't it? And honestly, the point I'm saying here is that this world is by far the biggest victim of the Traveler's Hub conundrum. Powdered Peaks consists of 11 levels total, which by itself is not bad, but the problem is that these levels are all crammed into 2 different areas that make out Powdered Peaks, and the second of the 2 areas is even post-game exclusive, which honestly really sucks. With all the levels crammed into a tiny location, most of these levels end up being pretty damn forgettable, and the post-game exclusivity of 4 of these levels, yes, this Chili Peaks has only 4 levels, with the addition of 2 chest levels, means that you're only gonna need to go through 5 levels, 8 if you count those in Gontu Cave, but it's still a pretty small amount, especially considering that it is the only world that forces you to go into a temporary dungeon in the main game. And again, Peculiar and Nimbus are both okay worlds, with one being decently big and the other having a great soundtrack, as well as not being too small. Powdered Peaks gets mainly saved by its music, which is really good, but the crunching of all the levels and needing to go through less than half of them in the main game is what makes it the worst world in the game. And I feel really bad for it, because I love the cold. Okay, from here on out, every single world I mention is really good. But this is a tier list, and as such, I am not really forgiving anyone for even the smallest of mistakes. So let's get to it, shall we? Like Powdered Peaks before, Nimbus is a world that only consists of 2 areas, and has a lot of optional routes, but this time the world consists of a respectable amount of stages in 18. Even then, only 2 areas and a lot of optional stuff means you're gonna spend very little time doing stuff here. I do like this world though. A factory high up in the clouds is an interesting setting. The music is top notch, and the place even got me theorizing about Miitopia being part of the Mario universe, because just look at Cloud Kingdom from Mario Odyssey. Heck, even the extra content from Nimbus is actually pretty memorable. Still, the place is kind of small relative to the other worlds, which is why it's this low on the list. Still a really good world. Man, this is gonna be a fun pick. And by that I mean the comment section will probably tear me apart for this pick. So, Next Door, the second world in the game and one of the major worlds of the story, and in my opinion, by far the worst. I primarily think Next Door is the worst because of its story, which is just short and generic. Sure, the genie being a thief is kind of interesting. Honestly, it's like this is an old djinn rather than the modern stereotypical genie. But aside from that, the story isn't really that engaging. You just get the money the genie stole and boom, face erase. It's kinda bland. Now, there are things I like about Next Door. In spite of its small size, Next Door is by far the most challenging world of any major in the game, because this world tends to have at least one baddie that stops me cold in my tracks during challenge runs, which means Next Door is memorable. Plus, the jobs you're giving in Next Door are some of the best and most interesting in the game, as they're all very good. But in terms of anything memorable that isn't really a job, you don't get anything in the standard Miitopia ways. And then again, outside of challenge runs, the world is not really that hard, so most people don't actually remember any challenge, which is sad. Now, don't get me wrong, Next Door is a really good world. In fact, I like the majority of the worlds in this game, as I previously stated. But really, some of the worlds really just had to bite the bullet. Sorry, Next Door, you're simply not the best world ever. The last world of the Traveler's Hub saga lays dormant here, boys and girls. I know that sounded weird, but that's because it is. A peculiar pick, eh? Especially since it's higher than a main world. Explaining sure is necessary. To be totally honest, Peculiar is a world that is barely scratched by the Traveler's Hub conundrum, as it and Next Door are actually on a tie in this list. The big thing with the Traveler's Hub conundrum is the length of the worlds and impacts being significantly shortened, but Peculiar isn't majorly affected by it, or at least it isn't felt as badly as the other two worlds it affects. I think I need to give an example though, if you can call it an example. Roll back that clip from Useless Coding Facts again.
Come on, if the worlds are this tiny, why tease us all the way back in Greenhorn about Powdered Peaks, the smallest world in the game? It is tiny, and by that logic, what is even the point of Nimbus being the foundation ground of the skyscraper, which is its own world, alongside other world, which I really don't count as its own world.
Did you hear that? Well, I mean, you did hear me complaining about Powdered Peaks and Nimbus, but you didn't hear me complaining about Peculiar, because Peculiar is not a bad world at all. It's good. This Peculiar world, as the pun suggests, is a decently sized land of mystery, with two major areas to explore, which makes it seem relatively small at first, but when considering the portals that are scattered throughout the world, teleporting you to replicas of other areas in the game, give the world more length and originality, making the world memorable and fun at the same time, in addition to some tough baddies and an extra job to collect in Vampire to get you to visit the place more often. The only issue I have with this world is the relatively underwhelming soundtrack in comparison to the other worlds, with the exception of Manor Macabre, but it's still all really good and hardly an issue. As a result, the world is really well done in spite of its limitations. Now let's move on. I see why this is post-game, because Jesus who saw a twirgle, I hate the beach. As I said like literally a second ago, this is a post-game world, and perhaps the first of the two post-game worlds you went to. Galados Isle is more of your typical Miitopic goodness, all with some nice beach music, a wide variety of enemies, and even a place that fights so hard you might even get PTSD. Alright, the elf job also exists here, I almost forgot about that. Galados Isle is mostly filler, but it at least does a solid job at being filler. It has many of the main post-game quests under its belt, giving it some solid bosses, and the previously mentioned Enchanted Galados, being your ultimate achievement from this world, is not a bad thing at all, since you get one of the best, if not the best job in the game from it, which can also help you out immensely in the other post-game stuff, which we will discuss later. By that logic, you can probably tell that in my opinion, this world does many things right. Good enemies, solid bosses, solidly high difficulty, heck even a place to grind gold on respawning rich snurps. My main problem with the world is its lack of many bosses, and the existence of a thing whose name I only said once before and don't say again to protect your lonely selves from being grounded. But this is still a great world to go through, and the elf job helps it out a lot. Keep going, designers. Well, that's it! If anyone actually left and didn't get the reference, I am going to be disappointed. Ah yes, the very ending of the main game, here to grace us in the number 5 spot. Being the very end of the journey, the skyscraper has many upsides, particularly the vast pool of enemies, as well as the grand feeling that you get as you climb the tower. Honestly, that grand feeling is my favorite part of the world, because in my opinion, this is honestly a part that Nintendo and Good Feel nailed. Seriously, even after playing the game like 15 times, I still feel that grand when going through the skyscraper, as if it was my first ever playthrough. And the feeling I get when finishing it all is so monumental, I cannot give a good explanation to it all. Plus, it's a nice challenge when getting past the General and Pharaoh. Oh wait, the refights! This is another thing that the skyscraper does really well. There are many times in the game where you fight the same enemy just with different stats and call the different enemy, but here it's done really well since it preps you up for the refights, thus giving the refights a reason for existence. This world does have some downsides though, primarily the constantly shifting difficulty, with some of the enemies being really easy and some of them being nightmares, even when disregarding the optional terror feeds. As we can see directly from the bosses, the Phantom of Evil and Red Frog are really hard to beat, while the Gold General and Pharaoh 2 are really easy to beat. This is a point where the game just doesn't know how hard it should be, and that's kind of bad. In summary, I think this world is really good, and a historically excellent way to cap off the game. But while this is the end of the game, this is not the end of the video, so let's move on. One word: music. The third world in the game is this jam, and oh boy, this is an experience to behold. To start off, I think I need to lay ground by comparing Realm of the Fate and Next Door, because I see some of you in the comments being really angry if not. As such, for a while we will discuss what Realm of the Fate does right and Next Door does not, and also vice versa. First of all, I think Realm of the Fate has a better story than that of Next Door. Sure, in terms of a formula, they're painfully similar, but Realm of the Fate gives it this one little push that lets it be a decent enough story. Specifically, I think that the Fab Fairies are much better characters than the Genie of the Lamp, as they stick for a while, being your first ever interactions with extra allies, unless you count the Prince of the Nearby Land and Greenhorn, which I don't, as well as just generally being more memorable. Sure, the purpose of both the Fab Fairy Trio and the Genie of the Lamp is to unlock a blockade to let you progress through the story, but the difference is how they open that blockade up. Because I'd much rather see my team dance with them celebrities to some good music than a genie blowing away a simple boulder. And by that regard, the story is pulled off much better than otherwise. Plus, the story is complemented really well by the soundtrack of Realm of the Fate, which itself is leagues better than that of Next Door's, which I think is astonishing since Next Door has a really awesome soundtrack as well. Although this might only be because of the fact that the soundtrack of Realm of the Fate is legitimately perfect, and the best soundtrack in a game where the music is preposterously good to begin with. But we still have to roll in some negatives. Next Door brings more interesting jobs and a much higher difficulty than Realm of the Fate ever will, with a few exceptions being the Cobra from Next Door, the Spider from Realm of the Fate, and also the Princess job from Realm of the Fate. Oh, and also Tank sucks. Regardless, I still think Realm of the Fate does really well where it needs to do really well. After Next Door ends up being not so memorable, Realm of the Fae steps up as a really fun world to play. It's comfortably easy, sounds incredible, and has an okay story to it all, despite its formula being pretty bland. Now let's move on to the top 3. Man, I love lava stages. So, Karkatan, the fake final world of the game, where you fight the force that is the Darklord and rescue your friends from his clutches along the way. Karkatan, in my opinion, is a world that nails everything it sets out to do, with great battles, music, and a nice story that leads to the end of the game. I really want to mention the story though, because I believe it does so much right. Throughout the story, the Darklord captures all 9 of your teammates in the transitions between the first 4 worlds, Greenhorn, Next Door, Realm of the Fae, and none other than Karkatan, and gets rid of all of your jobs, of course, except for the one you have in Realm of the Fae. So then you get him in his house of, Karkatan, but along the way you find out that all of your teammates had their faces removed, so then you have to go get all their faces back, rescue the teammates, get them along, and confront the Darklord in the not really final showdown. Of course, that ending is revealed to be fake as the Dark Curse takes control of the Great Sage, who for a while helped to get your teammates as an extra ally. In short, I think this is one of the best worlds in the game in terms of plot. In fact, I think it's either Karkatan or one other world that has my favorite plot parts of the game. And aside from that, the place is pretty big. The only gripe I have with this world is really minor, and it's the fact that most of the levels are in the Darklord's castle, meaning that without it, it would be ridiculously tiny. But it really doesn't matter, and most of the levels are at least somewhat challenging to go through. I mean, hey, look at the absolute units that call this place home. Damn, dear God, you would agree with me instantly. In addition to that, this world has my second favorite soundtrack in the game, obviously behind Realm of the Fae. You all know how my favorite track in the game comes from here, you know, the Darklord's Wrath. Well, on top of that, this place also has other incredible tracks. The battle theme is great, Darklord's castle gives us good vibes, and even things like Heaven Hollow are excellent. The only blemish on this soundtrack though is that it's relatively small. In short, this world does what it needs to do unbelievably well, and really excels in all the right places. Plus, it's a great tutorial for the multi-management of all 9 allies at once. It really is incredible, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Just, ooh, top notch. Now let's move on. Okay, so if you did the math, you probably already know what the 2 remaining worlds are, and are asking yourselves which one will win out. And while this world I'm about to show you is absolutely deserving of the number 1, it had some tough competition. But alas, it has a special place in all our hearts as a world that contributes a lot to the game and the community. This is one of the most major worlds of the story. Now, its contribution is well known, with its variety of bosses and pretty scary tower, but what exactly does it contribute to the story? Nothing, because there's no story in the post-game. That was my attempt at faking an audience, and it was probably horrible. But yes, New Lumos is ranked number 2, but it really does deserve to be in the number 1. It just lost in a certain field that it really could not compete in. Anyways, New Lumos is the main part of the post-game, where you test your skills against 8 different bosses, followed by the Tower of Dread. I put this world up here because of its role in the post-game, as the main goal of the post-game is to finish New Lumos and beat the Tower of Dread. Heck, you even get the first of 7 gold medals for beating the Tower of Dread. In addition to that, its soundtrack, while rather minuscule, is great throughout, with really only one blemish in it being the Darklord's normal battle theme instead of using the Darklord's Wrath for the Dark King and Queen. God damn it, why did he not do that? Speaking of that toughness, I think New Lumos is great for the health of the community because of it. As the ultimate goal of many Miitopia players, it sparks conversations between those who beat New Lumos and those who didn't beat it, as they're seeking out for hints. Then sparks friendly debates between those who did beat New Lumos about their opinions on jobs, enemies, and even the 10 worlds of the game. As the linchpin of Miitopia's sadly small longevity, this world does a lot right. New Lumos is split into 8 different districts, each with their own challenging stages and a boss to take down. And it is a blast! Beating each feels great, and the Tower of Dread being an even grander challenge feels even better to deal with. This here is truly a masterpiece of a world. Absolutely the best world in the game. Except for the obvious. Did you do the math here? Because there's literally only one world remaining. Among all these worlds, the deserts, forests, mountains, buildings, and even outer freaking space, there is one world that is set out to be the clear number 1. New Lumos was close, but there is nothing, and I mean nothing, that can beat out such a magnificent first impression of an excellent game. Without this world existing, we might not have even been here discussing a thing about Miitopia. Obviously, I'm referring to the first of the 10 worlds, Greenhorn. Why is Greenhorn such a good first impression, you may ask? Well, that's because it's the most Miitopia gets by far. Greenhorn, as I mentioned, is the first world of the game, so its impact can be heavily felt across the whole thing. It has the most important role of any world, since like any first experience of a game, it has to make sure the player wants to keep playing the game. And Greenhorn does that really well in my opinion. Good battles, great songs, and possibly the best story section in the game. I think nothing gets wackier and more memorable than this gem. Let me inform you on said story from memory alone. Sup YouTube, I'm 86.4 and today I'm going to read a story. A story from this wonderful book that I have found about the story of Greenhorn. And I'm not going to use that book because I know it from memory. Either way, let us begin. His story follows a little traveler that has landed in the wonderful island of Miitopia. And he finds a moth with some human eyes, which scares him and makes him flee. He then conveniently enough finds a village which goes by the name of Greenhorn. He gets there and the Darklord immediately takes the faces of only half the town like a damn stupid moron. You go and see a mother who had her child's face stolen, and she tells you to go get the face. Upon saying yes, because you can't say no because of plot, she gives you an antique charm to go along the way. You get to the Darklord and the child's face is immediately being put on a slime for you to fight. Then the antique charm is revealed to have the power of the great guardian spirit, or basically Santa Claus, who then gives you a combat class to fight with. You fight the slime, you kill the slime, you get the face, you put the face on the child, you literally just gonna plaster it in, and then Santa pretty much commands you to go defeat the Darklord, cause you owe him. You don't really owe him, but whatever. Point is, you go along your way getting the faces of every single one of the townsfolk, also finding the great sage along the way, who is impactful later. Quite impactful, if you know what I mean. Upon seeing the last face you need to rescue, the Darklord informs you like an idiot that he's going to attack the king of Greenhorn. You rescue the face, you tell the dubious mayor, who gives you an instruction to tell the guards to let you in to access the king. You access the king, and then you tell him that his face is about to get stolen. The king promptly laughs, and then immediately his face gets stolen because of plot. You go and get the king's face, which then makes him really happy, and he gives you 1500 gold. Then he tells you to go tell his daughter, the princess, about the whole thing, which then, upon telling her, makes her scared about one of her childhood friends, which right now is helping her, the mother, who gave you antique charm. Why exactly? Well, when you get to the Greenhorn town, you get informed that the mother has lost her child again and that she sent someone to find him before you. And then you find them both being attacked by goblins. Or to be more precise, the child is being attacked by goblins. The besmirch just kind of wiggles around and then gets his ass beaten. And his head smacked on the ground. Then you beat the slimes. He just kind of cries. You tell him about the situation. Yeah. You tell that to the princess, who then... You tell that to the princess, which then makes the king be like, forget about it, because he doesn't use the marriage of his daughter as something but love. No, he uses it as a political bargaining tool, like every single king in the medieval era, basically. Then he tells you to go get the prince of the nearby land, which is the prince of next door, and ergo the pun. He tells you to go get him from a place called the Arid Frontier. What is an Arid Frontier is a griffin that has destroyed his army. The Prince of Nearby Land, by the way, is the fiance of the Princess of Greenhorn, and this is why she's a political bargaining tool. He tells you about the whole griffin shtick, and then you beat the griffin. He gets a little cocky. Then he goes back to the castle to find that the besmirch has snuck his way in there without consent. How? I don't know. The people here are just kind of stupid. That prompts a little fight between everyone, which makes the king ask you to get a calming fruit from the forest. Upon getting the calming fruit and getting back to the castle, you realize that it's been overrun in the 2 minutes you were gone. You fight a bunch of imps that were threatening the guards and the king himself, a naughty imp, and you find out that the princess's face has been stolen. The prince of the nearby land, flees the place because he's scared. The besmirch, on the other hand, goes to Nightmare Tower, where the face was. He saw the face heading towards Nightmare Tower, and he's flailing his way to get there like a champion. You also get there because you want to rescue the princess, and you know that you pretty much the only way you can beat that damn gorilla that's all the way on top of the tower on the 4th floor, 100 meters off the ground. That's just a thing I made up. But point is you beat the gorilla. The Darklord gets annoyed because apparently he is in his happy mood, which is why he spared you, I think, which is retarded. And yeah, the princess's face is rescued. The besmirch does a bunch of just cries a little bit, and then you both get back to the castle, where because of the besmirch being as heroic as he was, gets to marry the princess, and gets to marry the princess. The prince on the nearby land then just cries a little bit and flees. Then you go to Arid Frontier, and boom, job erased and ally stolen. The end of the tale. That was a long part of the script, but this here emphasizes how great the story is. It's wacky, but it doesn't go too much for comedy and keeps itself straight. I love it! And it's not like the journey to that destination is bad either. It's awesome as well. Simple to beat, but isn't afraid of being a slight obstacle every now and then. Heck, it even previews freaking Powder Peaks, which is an incredible attention to detail. Can I really describe it in any word but majestic? This place is a damn piece of art, and it pulls all the right stops to not just be a great introduction to the game, but to be an incredible world in its own right, which is exactly why I say it's the best world in the game. An energetic world with an energetic setting and an energetic story is basically Miitopia in a nutshell. This is practically perfect, and this is why I say it's the best world in the game. And well, that's it!